Ever felt unheard, or that your contributions were overlooked simply because of who you are? You're not alone. Imagine a world where one wrong word could cost you everything, your family's honor, even your life. This is the world Ban Zhao navigated. Ban Zhao dared to educate a world that told her to be silent. Uncover how this ancient scholar defied expectations, leaving an indelible mark on history despite immense patriarchal pressure. Her story is a testament to perseverance. Tonight, I'm taking you inside a scholar's quarters in Luoyang, capital of the Eastern Han Dynasty, on a winter morning in the year 105 CE, to experience the daily reality of being a woman who writes while history insists women shouldn't write, and why the compromises required to do intellectual work in a system designed to exclude you would exhaust you before breakfast. Your hands are already numb. The brazier in the corner provides minimal heat. The inkstone in front of you has frozen overnight. You'll need to grind fresh ink, which means warming water first, which means your writing is delayed by another hour. The historical text you're completing, your brother's unfinished work, sits in careful stacks around you. Bamboo slips bound into scrolls. Thousands of characters already written, thousands more needed. The expectation is that you'll finish what your brother Ban Zhao couldn't complete before his death. But the expectation never mentioned that you'd have to do it while managing a household, teaching the empress, raising nephews, and carefully never appearing to claim credit for your own scholarship. You're not actually Ban Zhao. You're you, transported into her life. And the first thing you'd realize is that you wouldn't make it through morning rituals without offending someone or revealing your ignorance of the thousands of tiny rules that govern how a respectable woman moves through the world. When to speak, how to walk, where to look, what topics you can discuss and with whom. Intellectual work is just one small part of the day. Everything else is performance. Exhausting, constant, perfect performance of prescribed femininity. And if you fail at the performance, you lose permission to do the work. That's the trap. To be a woman scholar in Han Dynasty China means being so perfectly conventional in every other way that people permit your one unconventional act, writing. Let me show you what a day actually requires. Not the romanticized version where you gracefully brush characters onto silk while admirers applaud your brilliance. The real version. The cold, the constraints, the compromises, the constant negotiation between who you are and who you're allowed to be. The morning begins before dawn. This is winter in Luoyang, around 105 CE, the capital of the Eastern Han Dynasty. Population roughly 500,000. It's one of the largest cities in the world at this time. The imperial palace complex dominates the northern part of the city. Your family compound is in a respectable district, not the most elite area, but solidly scholarly official class. The compound houses multiple generations. Elderly relatives, your widowed status means you live with your son's family, various nephews and nieces, servants. The compound is crowded, and you're never alone. You wake in darkness. The room is freezing. Your breath creates clouds in the air. You sleep on a raised platform bed with heavy quilted coverings, but the cold penetrates everything. Northern China in winter is brutally cold. The Yellow River sometimes freezes solid enough to cross. Your room has paper windows that let in dim light during the day but provide no insulation. The wooden lattice frames hold oiled paper, not glass. Glass windows won't be common in China for centuries. You need to dress yourself carefully. As a widow, you wear specific colors and styles. Nothing bright or ornamental. Your hair must be arranged in the proper widow's style, pinned and covered. This takes time. Your hands are stiff from the cold. You're 60 years old. Your joints ache. The elaborate hairstyle required of your class and status is difficult to manage alone, but you've done it for decades. Hairpins, combs, everything is positioned according to convention. The clothing is layers, an inner robe of silk, an outer robe of heavier silk or brocade, but in subdued colors appropriate to widowhood, a jacket for warmth. The garments are precisely tailored, with wide sleeves and crossed collars, left over right, never right over left, that's for the dead. Every detail of dress communicates status, family standing, marital situation. You cannot dress casually or carelessly. Every public appearance is judged. Before you can eat or begin the day's work, there are rituals. You must pay respects at the family altar, bow to ancestors, offer incense. This is not optional. Family religious observance is mandatory and constant. The ancestors are watching. Failing in ritual obligations brings shame on the entire family. As a woman, your adherence to ritual is especially scrutinized. Women are expected to be more careful, more correct, more devoted to family obligations than men. Men can occasionally be forgiven lapses, women cannot. The compound is waking around you. Servants are starting kitchen fires. Other family members are emerging from their quarters. There's a hierarchy to everything. Who enters rooms in what order? Who speaks first? Who sits where at meals? As an elderly widow with a reputation as a scholar, you have some status. But you're still a woman, still expected to defer to male family members regardless of age or accomplishment. Your nephews are young men now. They speak before you in formal contexts. This is proper. This is how society functions. As we move through these morning rituals, and if you're finding this detailed reconstruction of daily life compelling, subscribe for more immersive journeys into how historical figures actually navigated their worlds. Breakfast is simple: millet porridge, perhaps some pickled vegetables. Tea, if your family can afford it, though tea culture is still developing in this period. The meal is eaten in prescribed order. Elders first, men before women of the same generation, children last. You eat in the women's quarters, separate from the men, unless it's a formal family meal where everyone gathers. Most days, the separation is maintained. Men and women occupy different spaces in the compound. The women's quarters are in the inner areas, away from the street and public view. This is proper. This is protection. This is also isolation. After breakfast, you should attend to household management. As a senior woman in the compound, you have responsibilities: supervising servants, checking food stores, resolving disputes between women of different status, teaching younger women proper behavior. This is expected labor, unpaid and unrecognized, but essential. A household this size requires constant management. Someone must know what needs to be done and ensure it happens. Much of that falls to senior women. But you also have the historical work. Your brother Ban Zhao died in prison 27 years ago in 79 CE. He'd been working on the Book of Han, a comprehensive history of the Western Han dynasty. The work was unfinished. The Imperial Library holds his drafts and notes. You've been tasked with completing it. Not officially. Women don't receive official appointments as historians, but everyone understands that you're doing the work. Your father, Ban Zhao, began the historical project. Your brother continued it. Now you're finishing it. 3 generations of the Ban family working on one historical text. Except you're the one who actually completes it, and your name appears nowhere in the official records as the author. You need to write today. The work doesn't progress without daily effort, but first you need to prepare your writing materials. This is time-consuming and particular. You write with a brush, ink, and either bamboo slips or silk. Bamboo slips are cheaper, but heavier and bulkier. Silk is expensive, but allows finer writing and easier storage. For historical work, you use silk scrolls when possible. The Imperial Library provides some materials, but you also use family resources. The ink must be ground fresh. You have an ink stick, solid ink made from soot and binding agents. You pour a small amount of water onto an inkstone, then grind the ink stick against the stone in circular motions. The process is meditative, but also cold and tedious in winter. The ink gradually dissolves into the water, creating liquid ink. The consistency matters. Too watery, and the characters will blur. Too thick, and the brush won't flow smoothly. After decades of writing, you can judge by feel, but in winter, everything is harder. Your hands are cold, the water is cold, the ink grinds slowly. The brush is a bamboo handle with animal hair bristles. Different brushes for different purposes. Larger brushes for bold strokes, smaller for fine detail. You select a medium brush for historical writing. The characters need to be clear and consistent. This is official work. It must meet imperial standards. Your writing surface is a low table. You kneel or sit on a mat to write. The posture becomes uncomfortable after hours. Your back aches. Your knees hurt. But this is how writing is done. You position the silk scroll carefully. The silk is delicate. Errors are difficult to correct. Each character must be written correctly the first time. There's no backspace, no delete key, no easy revision. You must hold the entire structure of a sentence in your mind before you begin writing it, so the characters flow logically and the meaning is clear. The historical text you're working on today covers the reign of Emperor Hu ruled from 141 to 87 BCE. You're writing about his military campaigns, his administrative reforms, his relationship with Confucian scholars. The sources are scattered. Your brother's notes, official documents from the imperial archives, earlier historical texts, interviews with descendants of people who lived during Emperor Wu's reign. You must synthesize all this into coherent narrative, maintain chronological accuracy, include proper dates and names, and write in the formal historical style required for official histories. The work requires intense concentration. Each character is a decision. Which word conveys the meaning precisely? Which historical precedent should structure this passage? Which details must be included and which omitted? You're not just copying sources, you're creating interpretive history, deciding what matters, deciding how to frame events. This is intellectual work of the highest order.
And you're doing it while kneeling on a cold floor in a room where you cannot close the door because a respectable woman doesn't close herself away from family. People interrupt. A servant needs direction about tonight's meal. A nephew asks where to find a particular scroll. A younger woman needs advice about a dispute with her mother-in-law. Each interruption breaks your concentration. You must put down the brush, attend to the interruption with perfect courtesy, then return to writing and reconstruct your train of thought. Men in your family do scholarly work in studies where servants know not to interrupt. You work in the women's quarters where interruption is constant. This is just reality. You've learned to work despite it. The physical act of writing is exhausting. Your hand cramps after an hour. The brush must be held at precise angles for different strokes. Each character is built from standard stroke orders: horizontal, vertical, diagonal, hooks, dots. The same characters appear repeatedly in historical writing: names, titles, dates, places. You've written some characters thousands of times, but they must be consistent. A reader should not be able to tell which characters you wrote yesterday versus today. The style must be uniform across the entire text. You write for 2 hours before the demands of household life require attention again. 2 hours of focused work, maybe 500 characters written. The entire Book of Han will be over 800,000 characters. You've been working on this for years. You'll work on it for years more. The progress is incremental. No one sees the daily effort. They'll only see the finished text. And even then, they'll credit your brother, not you.
But there's another part of your work. You've been summoned to the palace. The Empress and Imperial consorts want instruction in classical literature and proper conduct. This is actually how you're known to history, more than your historical work. You wrote Lessons for Women, a text instructing women on proper behavior. The imperial family read it. They were impressed. They invited you to teach. This is extraordinary. A woman from outside the imperial family teaching the Empress? It's almost unprecedented. But it's acceptable because your teaching reinforces proper gender hierarchy. You're not challenging the system, you're explaining it. The palace is a complex world of ritual and danger. The emperor has multiple wives and consorts. They compete for his attention and favor. Their sons compete to become heir. The women's quarters of the palace are politically treacherous. Your job is to teach these women classical texts and proper conduct, which means teaching them how to survive palace politics without appearing to teach politics. You teach poetry, you teach history, you teach ritual, and embedded in all of it are lessons about restraint, observation, and careful speech. The journey to the palace requires preparation. You cannot go alone. A respectable woman doesn't travel alone through the city. You go with attendants, probably in a covered carriage or sedan chair. The carriage protects you from public view. Being seen in public, being visible to random men, would be improper. The carriage is stuffy and uncomfortable, but it maintains propriety. The ride takes maybe half an hour, depending on traffic. Luoyang's streets are crowded. Merchants, officials, soldiers, common people. The city is busy and loud. But inside your carriage, you're isolated from it all. The palace guards know you. You have permission to enter the women's quarters. This permission is valuable and fragile. If you offend anyone, if you're suspected of political maneuvering, if your teaching seems to challenge rather than reinforce proper order, the permission could be revoked. You're careful, always careful. You teach what's expected. You never criticize the emperor or male officials. You never suggest that women should have more freedom or power.
You teach women how to survive within the constraints, not how to escape them. Today, you're teaching the Book of Songs, the ancient poetry collection. The poems are beautiful and complex. Some are love poems. Some are political complaints disguised as love poems. Your students are intelligent. They understand the subtext. But you must teach the official interpretations, not the subversive readings. You explain how the poems demonstrate proper relationships between rulers and subjects, husbands and children. You don't mention the poems that seem to challenge these relationships. You don't discuss alternative readings. You teach conformity. The irony is thick. You're a woman scholar teaching women that women shouldn't be scholars. Your text, Lessons for Women, emphasizes women's subordination, humility, and domestic focus. Yet you wrote it. You're a published author and recognized intellectual teaching the Empress. The contradiction is visible to everyone, but no one mentions it. The contradiction is what makes your position possible. You can be a scholar as long as you tell everyone that women shouldn't be scholars. You can have influence as long as you teach that women shouldn't have influence. The paradox is your survival strategy.
After the teaching session, you return home. The day is past midpoint. The sun is a weak winter sun, not providing much warmth. The compound is busy with afternoon activities, meals being prepared, children being instructed. The routines of daily life continue as they always do. You're tired. The teaching requires performance. You must be gracious, patient, clear, and never show frustration or fatigue. You must embody the virtues you're teaching: serenity, self-control, deference. It's exhausting. But you need to write more. The historical text needs daily attention. If you skip days, the momentum is lost. The details become fuzzy. You forget what you were planning to write next. So you return to your writing table. You grind more ink. You take up the brush. You continue the passage about Emperor Wu's reign. The characters flow across the silk. Each one is carefully formed. The brush lifts and descends. The ink shines wet, then dries to matte black. The work progresses one character at a time. Your eyes hurt. The light is dimming as afternoon turns to evening. You're writing by daylight, no artificial light adequate for detailed writing. Winter days are short. You have maybe 2 more hours of sufficient light. You must use them. You write through the discomfort. Your back hurts, your hand cramps, your eyes strain. But the work must be done. No one will do it for you. Your brother is dead, your father is dead. You're the only one left who can complete this history. Around you, the compound prepares for evening. Kitchen smells drift through the air. Cooking oil, rice, vegetables, perhaps meat if it's a special day. You should help prepare the meal, that's expected. But you're writing. The conflict is constant. Your family accepts your scholarly work, mostly, but they also expect you to fulfill normal women's duties: cooking, cleaning, childcare, household management. You're not excused from those obligations just because you're writing history. You must do both. All women do both. They work their prescribed roles and whatever else they manage to squeeze in. The physical environment of Han Dynasty China shapes everything. Your clothing is beautiful but restrictive. The silk robes are heavy and limit movement. The wide sleeves are elegant but impractical. They get in the way when you're working. They drag through ink if you're not careful. They must be held back with one hand while you write with the other. Fashion is designed for appearance, not function. Women's clothing especially is designed to display status, not enable work. The buildings are wood and brick. The compound is organized around courtyards.
Multiple buildings around open spaces. This design allows extended families to live together while maintaining separate quarters. It also means limited privacy. Your writing room opens onto a courtyard. People pass by constantly. You hear conversations, arguments, children playing. The noise is constant in the background. You've learned to work through it, but it's draining. Your eyes hurt. The light is dimming as afternoon turns to evening. You're writing by daylight, no artificial light adequate for detailed writing. Winter days are short. You have maybe 2 more hours of sufficient light. You must use them. You write through the discomfort. Your back hurts, your hand cramps, your eyes strain. But the work must be done. No one will do it for you. Your brother is dead. Your father is dead. You're the only one left who can complete this history. Around you, the compound prepares for evening. Kitchen smells drift through the air. Cooking oil, rice, vegetables, perhaps meat if it's a special day. You should help prepare the meal. That's expected. But you're writing. The conflict is constant. Your family accepts your scholarly work, mostly, but they also expect you to fulfill normal women's duties. Cooking, cleaning, childcare, household management. You're not excused from those obligations just because you're writing history. You must do both. All women do both. They work their prescribed roles and whatever else they manage to squeeze in. The physical environment of Han Dynasty China shapes everything. Your clothing is beautiful but restrictive. The silk robes are heavy and limit movement. The wide sleeves are elegant but impractical. They get in the way when you're working. They drag through ink if you're not careful. They must be held back with one hand while you write with the other. Fashion is designed for appearance, not function. Women's clothing especially is designed to display status, not enable work. The buildings are wood and brick. The compound is organized around courtyards. Multiple buildings around open spaces. This design allows extended families to live together while maintaining separate quarters. It also means limited privacy. Your writing room opens onto a courtyard. People pass by constantly. You hear conversations, arguments, children playing. The noise is constant in the background. You've learned to work through it, but it's draining.
The climate is harsh. Winter is cold and dry. Summer is hot and humid. Spring brings dust storms. Autumn is brief and pleasant. You have no climate control. No heating beyond charcoal braziers. No cooling beyond shade and fans. You endure the weather. Everyone does. Comfort is not an expectation. Endurance is. The food is nutritious but monotonous. Millet and rice are staples. Vegetables when available. Meat occasionally. The diet is adequate for survival, but not exciting. Food preservation is limited. Salting, drying, pickling. Fresh food is seasonal. Winter means preserved foods. You miss fresh vegetables by late winter. Everyone does. But complaining is improper. You eat what's provided and express gratitude. The social structure is rigid. Everyone has a place determined by birth, gender, and age. You're a woman, which places you below men. You're elderly, which gives you some status. You're widowed, which constrains you. You're educated, which is unusual, but acceptable because of your family background. The Ban family have been scholars for generations. Your father was a historian. Your brother was a historian. You're continuing family tradition, which is more acceptable than if you were the first woman in your family to pursue scholarship. People tolerate your work partly because it's family work. You're not innovating, you're preserving. This matters more than you might realize. In Han Dynasty China, innovation is suspicious. Tradition is valued.
The ancient sages set proper patterns. Your job is to follow those patterns, not create new ones. Even your historical writing is framed as preserving the wisdom of the past, not creating new interpretation. You don't claim original insight. You claim only to be faithfully recording what happened. This humility is required. But it's also false. Selecting sources, structuring narrative, choosing which details to include, these are all creative acts. You're creating history while claiming only to record it. Your lessons for women are similar. You frame it as simply reminding women of ancient teachings about proper conduct. You don't claim to be innovating or creating new rules. You're just explaining what has always been expected. But the act of writing it down, of creating a systematic text on women's education and behavior, is actually innovative. There aren't many texts like it. You're creating something new while insisting you're only preserving tradition. This rhetorical strategy is essential. It allows you to work while claiming not to be doing anything unusual.
The evening meal is communal. The extended family gathers. Men eat first or separately, depending on formality. You eat with the women. The meal is quiet and orderly. Conversation is muted. Laughter is restrained. Everything is proper. After the meal, you help clean. You supervise. You ensure things are done correctly. Then, finally, you might have time to rest. But rest means more work. Younger women need instruction. Children need stories. Family business needs discussion. The day doesn't end just because the formal work ends. The social and emotional labor of maintaining family harmony is constant and gendered. Men retreat to their studies or social activities. Women manage relationships, resolve conflicts, maintain connections. This work is invisible and exhausting. By the time you're alone in your room for sleep, you're depleted. The writing you accomplished today feels insignificant. A few hundred characters, a tiny fraction of what's needed. The teaching at the palace was repetitive. You've explained those same poems dozens of times. The household management was mundane. The social obligations were draining. And tomorrow you'll do it all again. And the day after that, and the day after that. This is what wouldn't last a day means. Not that you'd die, not that you'd be physically harmed, but the constant performance, the endless constraints, the daily grinding effort to do intellectual work while meeting all the gendered expectations of your society would exhaust you. The compromises required would feel unbearable. Teaching women to accept subordination while you yourself practice scholarship. Writing history while knowing your name won't appear as author. Having influence while pretending you have none. Being brilliant while performing humility. The psychological weight is crushing. Ban Zhao lived this for decades. She completed the Book of Han, over 800,000 characters of careful historical prose. She wrote Lessons for Women, which influenced Chinese women's education for centuries. She taught the empress and imperial consorts. She raised children. She managed households. She navigated palace politics. She did all of this while being a woman in a society that believed women were intellectually inferior to men, that women should focus on domestic duties, that women shouldn't pursue scholarship or public influence.
And she succeeded. The Book of Han became one of China's official dynastic histories. I'm still studying today. Her prose is admired for its clarity and precision. Scholars quote her work. She's recognized as a major historian. But for centuries, her contribution was minimized or attributed to her brother. The full extent of her work was only gradually acknowledged. She wrote herself into history, but history tried to write her out. The lessons for women are more complicated. Modern readers often find it oppressive. The text emphasizes women's subordination, obedience, and self-effacement. It teaches that women should defer to men, accept lower status, and focus on domestic virtues. This is frustrating to read if you believe in gender equality. But context matters. Ban Zhao was writing within a system she couldn't change. She was teaching women how to survive, not how to be free. And embedded in her teaching are more subversive lessons. She emphasizes education. Women should learn to read and write, she argues, to better fulfill their duties. But literacy is power. Once women can read, they can access knowledge beyond domestic instruction. They can read history, philosophy, and poetry. They can think beyond their prescribed roles. Ban Zhao opens a door while claiming to reinforce walls. She emphasizes women's moral importance. Women raise children, she argues. Therefore, women's virtue directly affects the next generation. If women are important to society's moral foundation, then women's education matters. Women's development matters. This is a more significant argument than it might appear. If women are merely decorative or utilitarian, their education is unnecessary. But if women's virtue shapes society, then women need cultivation. Ban Zhao is arguing for women's significance within the constraints of her culture. She also emphasizes women's intelligence. She doesn't argue women are less intelligent than men. She argues women need education to develop their intelligence. This is actually progressive for her time. Many scholars believed women were inherently intellectually inferior. Ban Zhao doesn't accept that premise. She accepts that women and men have different social roles, but not that women are intellectually lesser. This distinction matters. But all of this exists within a framework of restriction. Ban Zhao is working within the system, not challenging it. She's expanding women's space within patriarchy, not questioning patriarchy itself. This makes her both admirable and frustrating. She accomplished extraordinary things. She also taught women to accept subordination. Both things are true. History is complicated. Living as Ban Zhao meant navigating constant contradictions. Being brilliant while pretending not to be. Having authority while deferring to male relatives. Teaching while claiming only to serve. Writing while minimizing your authorship. The mental effort required to maintain these contradictions without losing your sense of self is immense. Modern people struggle with much less. We have more freedom to be authentic, to claim our achievements, to exist without constant performance, and we still find it exhausting. Imagine doing it every moment of every day for your entire life. The widowhood added complications. Ban Zhao married young, as all women in her class did. Her husband died when she was relatively young. Widowhood meant she couldn't remarry. Remarriage for widows was considered improper. She was expected to remain faithful to her dead husband's memory for the rest of her life. This was presented as virtue. In practice, it meant limited options. She lived with her son's family or her natal family. She had no independent household, no economic independence. She was dependent on male relatives for survival. But widowhood also gave her freedom. She wasn't managing her husband's household. She wasn't focused on wifely duties. She had time for scholarly work. Many educated women in Chinese history did their most significant work after widowhood. The constraint of never remarrying was balanced by the freedom from current marriage. This is the kind of bitter trade-off that characterized women's lives, limited options that sometimes opened unexpected opportunities. The palace teaching was prestigious but dangerous. Palace politics in Han Dynasty China were vicious. Consorts competed for the emperor's favor. Their families competed for power. Any misstep could be fatal. Ban Zhao was teaching in this environment. She had to be politically neutral, personally inoffensive, and intellectually useful. One wrong word could end her access or endanger her family. The teaching required not just knowledge, but also political skill, reading the room, understanding factions, knowing what could be said and what must be avoided. This is emotional labor of the highest order. The historical work required different skills: accuracy, thoroughness, stylistic consistency. The Book of Han covers 200 years of Western Han Dynasty history, multiple emperors, countless officials, wars, reforms, disasters, achievements. Ban Zhao had to synthesize decades of sources into coherent narrative. She had to verify dates and names. She had to make judgments about which sources were reliable. She had to structure the material according to established historical formats.
The traditional Chinese historical format divides material into categories: imperial annals, chronological tables, treatises on specific subjects like astronomy or economics, and biographies of important figures. Ban Zhao was working within this structure, not inventing it. But the structure required massive organizational effort. Where does a particular event get mentioned? In the annals? In a treatise? In a biography? Sometimes the same event appears in multiple sections, each emphasizing different aspects. The historian must decide on appropriate placement and avoid contradictions. Ban Zhao's prose style is formal and economical. She doesn't write flowery descriptions. She states facts clearly and moves on. This was the standard for historical writing. The goal was accuracy and comprehensiveness, not entertainment. Modern readers might find it dry, but the work accomplished massive documentation of an entire dynasty's history. It's a monumental achievement, and she did it without modern research tools. No computers, no databases, no internet search, just scrolls, notes, and her own memory and organizational skills. She also wrote poetry, though less survives. Her poem, Traveling Eastward, describes a journey and reflects on family separation. The poem is personal and emotional, different from her formal historical prose. It reveals the woman behind the historian, someone who felt loneliness and loss, someone who missed her family, someone who was human, not just a writing machine. The poetry matters because it reminds us that Ban Zhao had an inner life beyond her public accomplishments. She felt emotions. She experienced grief. She had relationships. She wasn't just a writing machine. She was a full person navigating a difficult world. The constraints she lived under didn't eliminate her humanity.
They just forced her to express it carefully, in limited ways, in moments between obligations.
The nights were probably her most peaceful time. After everyone else slept, alone in her room, the compound is quiet. She could think without interruption. Maybe she did some writing by candlelight, though it wasn't ideal for detailed work. Maybe she just sat with her thoughts, planning the next day's work, processing the day's interactions, existing without performance, at least briefly. These moments of solitude were probably precious, rare spaces where she could be herself without audience or judgment. But even alone, she wasn't fully free. She'd internalized the constraints. She'd spent her entire life learning proper behavior, correct thinking, and acceptable expression. The rules were inside her, not just external. This is how socialization works. You learn the boundaries so thoroughly that you police yourself. You don't need external enforcement, because internal enforcement is constant. Ban Zhao probably didn't think, "I could be free of these constraints." She probably thought, "This is how the world is. This is how I must be." The constraints felt natural because she'd never known anything else. This is important to understand. We can see the constraints from outside. We can see how restrictive and unfair her society was. But she lived inside it. She accepted many of its premises. She believed in social hierarchy. She believed in family obligation. She believed women and men had different proper roles. She wasn't a modern feminist trapped in ancient China. She was an ancient Chinese woman making the best of her situation within her own worldview. Her choices make sense within her context. We can critique the context without dismissing her agency within it. What can we learn from Ban Zhao? Several things. First, intellectual work under constraint is exhausting but possible. People throughout history have created knowledge, art, and literature while navigating systems designed to exclude them. They found ways, not perfect ways, not ways that gave them full freedom or recognition, but ways nonetheless. Ban Zhao completed a major historical work despite being a woman in a patriarchal society. This is remarkable. It's also sobering. She had to work twice as hard for half the recognition. That's unjust, but she did the work anyway. Second, compromise is complex. Ban Zhao compromised constantly. She wrote texts reinforcing women's subordination. She taught conformity. She worked within the system rather than challenging it. Some people admire this as pragmatic, others criticize it as complicity. Both perspectives have merit. Real people in difficult situations make complicated choices. They're not heroes or villains. They're humans navigating constraints with limited options. We can recognize Ban Zhao's achievements while also acknowledging her limitations. We can appreciate her work while also wishing she'd had more freedom. Third, visibility matters, but is insufficient. Ban Zhao was visible in her time. She was known, she was recognized, but her contributions were still minimized. Her name didn't appear as the author of the Book of Han for centuries. Her historical work was attributed to her brother. Visibility doesn't guarantee recognition. Official records can erase even visible women. This suggests that representation needs institutional support. Individual achievement isn't enough if systems don't properly record and acknowledge that achievement. Fourth, education is power, even when it's constrained. Ban Zhao argued for women's education within a framework of subordination. But education has unpredictable effects. Once people learn to read, they can access ideas beyond what their teachers intended. Literacy opens doors. Ban Zhao's Lessons for Women was conservative in intent, but radical in promoting women's literacy. The long-term effects of women's education exceeded what she probably imagined. This suggests that even constrained education can have liberating effects over time. Fifth, historical figures deserve context. Modern readers often judge historical people by modern standards. This is natural, but can be unfair. People in the past lived in different worlds with different possibilities. Ban Zhao couldn't have been a modern feminist. The concept didn't exist. The social structures that make modern feminism possible didn't exist. Judging her for not being something she couldn't have been is pointless. Better to understand what she actually was and did within her actual context. The challenge for us is learning from historical figures without romanticizing them. Ban Zhao was not a proto-feminist hero defying patriarchy. She was a complicated woman, navigating a patriarchal system and achieving remarkable things within it. She both challenged and reinforced gender constraints. She expanded women's space while also teaching women to accept subordination. She was brilliant and constrained, successful and limited, influential and erased. All of these truths coexist. If you actually tried to live as Ban Zhao for a day, you'd probably fail. The constant performance would be exhausting. The physical discomfort would be distracting. The grinding work of writing with brush and ink while managing a household would be overwhelming. The emotional labor of teaching conformity while practicing achievement would create cognitive dissonance. The constraints would feel suffocating. Modern people are used to more freedom, more choice, more ability to be authentic. Taking that away for even a day would be difficult, but Ban Zhao lived there for decades. She didn't just survive, she accomplished extraordinary things. She finished a major historical work. She wrote an influential educational text. She taught the empress. She raised a family. She navigated political dangers. She maintained her reputation and her family's status. She did all of this while being a woman in a society that believed women were inferior. That takes not just intelligence, but also immense strength, persistence, and strategic thinking. Her legacy is mixed. She influenced Chinese women's education for centuries. This had both positive and negative effects. Women learned to read because of her arguments for women's literacy, but they also learned to accept subordination because of her emphasis on women's proper roles. Her historical work is still studied and admired, but her authorship was erased for centuries. She was both remembered and forgotten, influential
and invisible. The evening deepens into night. The compound has settled into sleep. The cooking fires are banked. The gates are closed. The guards patrol silently. The city beyond the walls is quiet, except for the occasional dog barking or night watchman calling the hour. The winter stars are bright and cold overhead, the same stars that shine tonight, though we call them different names and understand them differently. Inside your room, you prepare for sleep. The brazier has gone cold. The blankets are heavy. Your body aches from the day's work. Your mind is tired from the constant performance, the endless navigation of social expectations, the grinding effort of doing intellectual work while managing all the other demands of life. Tomorrow will be the same, and the day after that, and the day after that.
But you've accomplished something today. A few hundred characters were added to the historical text, a teaching session completed, a household managed. These accumulate over time. Slowly, slowly, the work progresses. The history gets written. The influence spreads. The knowledge is preserved and transmitted. And that has to be enough, because there is no other option. You close your eyes. The compound is silent. The city sleeps. The dynasty continues its arc through history, unaware that a woman in a scholar's quarters is writing the history that will define how this era is remembered. Unaware that her words will outlast armies and empires. Unaware that 2,000 years later, people will still read what she wrote and marvel at her achievement. Sleep comes slowly. Your mind runs through tomorrow's tasks, the passages you need to write, the teaching you need to prepare. The household matters need attention, the constant juggling of obligations and aspirations, the endless work of being both a woman and a scholar in a world that insists these categories contradict each other. But for now, rest. The work will wait until morning. History can wait another night. The constraints will still be there tomorrow, but so will the possibility of writing one more paragraph, teaching one more lesson, accomplishing one more small thing that accumulates into a life of significance. Not the life you might have chosen if all choices were available, but a life nonetheless. A life that mattered. A life that made a difference. The stars wheel slowly overhead. The night deepens. The cold intensifies. But inside your quilted blankets, you are warm enough, safe enough. And tomorrow you will do it all again. Because that is what life requires. That is what your work demands. That is what Ban Zhao did, day after day, year after year, until her work was complete and her time was done. Sleep now. Rest. History will wait for you. The words will come. The achievement will accumulate. And 2,000 years later, people will remember. Not perfectly, not completely, but enough. Enough to know that a woman named Ban Zhao wrote history when history said women couldn't write. Enough to know that she mattered. Good night from ancient Lu Yang. Good night from the compound where scholarship and domesticity existed in uneasy partnership. Good night from the woman who wouldn't last a day in your world any more than you would last in hers, but who nevertheless built something that endures, that is remembered, that still matters.
I'm taking you to a dried wheat field in Shanxi province, March 1974, to experience the moment when a shovel struck something that shouldn't exist. To understand how a drought, a desperate need for water, and one farmer's persistence revealed an army that had been waiting in darkness for 2,000 years. Your hands are blistered. The shovel feels heavier with each strike into the hard-packed earth. It's early afternoon, and the sun is relentless. You've been digging since dawn. The well needs to be at least 15 meters deep to reach water, maybe deeper. The drought has been severe. The village's existing wells are running dry. Without water, the crops die. Without crops, your family starves. So you dig. You and 6 other farmers from Xiong village, taking turns with 2 shovels and a pickaxe, pulling up buckets of earth that smell like dust and clay and nothing else. The shovel hits something solid, not rock. You know the sound of rock. This is different. Hollow. You strike again, more carefully. There's definitely something down here. Pottery, probably. The fields around here are full of old pottery shards. Farmers find them constantly, sometimes whole vessels, if you're lucky. You can sell those for a few yuan. Not much, but better than nothing. You clear away more earth. The object is reddish-brown, curved, part of a large vessel, maybe? You work around it carefully, trying not to break whatever it is. The other farmers lean over the well opening, watching. One of them suggests you hurry up. The day is getting late. But you're curious now. This piece is bigger than the usual pottery fragments. Much bigger.
You pull it free. It's heavy. A curved section of terracotta, smooth on one side, rough on the other. Strange. You set it aside and keep digging. Immediately, your shovel hits something else. Another piece, then another. The well shaft is full of pottery. Large pieces, all the same reddish-brown color. All carefully made. One piece has a texture that makes you pause. You brush the dirt away. It's not a vessel. It's shaped like something else. Something organic. You trace the contours with your fingers. Your mind struggles to make sense of what you're seeing. Then it clicks. This is a hand. A human hand, life-sized, fingers slightly curled, made of terracotta buried 15 feet underground. This is the moment everything changes. For you, for your village, for archaeology, for the understanding of ancient China. But you don't know that yet. You just know you found something strange, something that shouldn't be here. You pull yourself out of the well shaft, holding the terracotta hand. The other farmers crowd around. Everyone is talking at once. What is it? Where did it come from? Is it worth money? Nobody has answers. You've just unearthed the first piece of an army of 8,000 soldiers, made of clay, buried for 2,000 years. The army of China's first emperor. But that knowledge is still days and weeks away. Right now, you're just a farmer who needs water, holding a pottery hand that doesn't make sense. The well project stops. You can't keep digging through whatever this is. The pieces might be valuable, or they might be cursed. Old things in the ground are unpredictable.
Some villagers think you should report the find. Others think you should keep quiet and sell whatever you can. The debate continues as the sun sets and the temperature drops, and the need for water remains urgent and unsolved.
Let me take you through what happens next. How a simple, well-digging project becomes one of the most important archaeological discoveries of the 20th century. How a farmer's life changes. How an emperor's ambition is revealed. How 2,000 years of silence is broken by the strike of a shovel in drought-stricken earth. The drought context matters. Shanxi province in 1974 is agricultural. Most people are farmers, living in villages, working collective land under the system established after the revolution. The land is productive when there's rain, but 1973 was dry. 1974 starts dry. The winter wheat needs water. The spring crops need water. The existing wells are shallow, barely adequate in good years. In drought years, they fail. Xiang village has maybe 300 people, small, rural, poor by urban standards but not destitute. People eat, children go to school, life proceeds at the rhythm of seasons and harvests. The village has existed for centuries in more or less this form. Farmers working fields that their ancestors worked. The same fields, the same crops, the same struggles against weather and pests and bad luck. The decision to dig a new well is collective. The village committee discusses it. The location is chosen based on traditional knowledge. Where does water accumulate? Where have previous wells succeeded? The spot selected is in a persimmon orchard, about 1.5 kilometers east of the village. The land is flat, nothing remarkable about it, just another field in a landscape of fields. The work crew is 7 men. Yang Zifei is one of them. He's 40 years old in 1974. Born during the war years, grew up through the revolution and its aftermath. He has little formal education. Most farmers his age don't. He can read basic characters, do simple math. His knowledge is practical. How to plant wheat, when to harvest, how to repair a plow, how to dig a well.
As we settle into this modest farming village where something extraordinary is about to emerge, and if you're finding this glimpse into rural China compelling, subscribe for more deep explorations of how ordinary moments became historical turning points. The well-digging technique is ancient. Dig straight down, shore up the sides as you go to prevent collapse, pull earth up in buckets. Keep digging until you hit water. It's back-breaking work. The earth at this site is hard-packed clay and loess, the yellow soil that defines this region. Loess is good for farming, but difficult to dig. It compacts over time. Each meter down requires more effort than the last. The crew works in shifts. 2 men in the well shaft, digging and filling buckets. 3 men at the surface, pulling up buckets and emptying them. 2 men resting, rotate every hour. The work is hot, dusty, and exhausting. Your throat is constantly dry, your muscles ache, but the work continues because it must. Water is survival. The pottery pieces appear about 3 meters down. This is shallower than expected for water, but not unusual for artifacts. The area is known to have archaeological remains. Nobody knows from what period exactly. The village is ancient. Every village around here is ancient. Layers of history are compressed into the soil. Tang Dynasty, Song Dynasty, earlier dynasties whose names people don't remember. Finding old pottery is normal, but the quantity is unusual, and the quality. These aren't crude farm vessels. These are carefully crafted pieces. The clay is fine. The workmanship is excellent. The fragments are too large and too numerous to ignore. Something significant is buried here. A tomb, probably.
a rich person's tomb given the quality. Tombs mean burial goods. Burial goods mean value. Young Tsifa wants to continue, not because he understands the historical significance. He doesn't. But he's curious, and he's practical. If there are valuable artifacts here, they could help the village. Money for the collective, maybe some recognition. He's also concerned about doing the right thing. Destroying historical artifacts is wrong. He knows that much. The government cares about history. There are regulations about archaeological finds.
The discussion that evening in the village is animated. Some people think they should report the find immediately. Contact the local cultural affairs office. Let experts handle it. Others are skeptical of government involvement. Bureaucrats might take everything. The village might get nothing. Better to keep quiet and see what else they find. Maybe take some pieces to town, see if anyone will buy them. Young Jufa is cautious. He knows the artifacts are unusual. He knows they might be important. But he also knows his village needs water. The well project is urgent. Crops are suffering. He suggests a compromise. Continue digging carefully, collect the artifacts, then report the find once they know what they're dealing with. This seems reasonable. The group agrees. The next day, digging resumes, more carefully now. The crew is trying to extract artifacts without breaking them. This slows progress. The pottery pieces continue appearing. Large sections of curved terracotta, flat pieces that might be base sections, and more pieces with that disturbing organic texture. A section that looks like a torso, another that might be part of a leg. The realization comes gradually. These aren't vessels, these are figures, life-sized human figures made of terracotta. Statues buried in formation underground. But why? For what purpose? Nothing in anyone's experience explains this. Tomb goods, sure. Small figurines, sure. But life-size statues? An entire army of them, apparently? It doesn't make sense. One farmer suggests they might be soldiers, guardian figures for a tomb. This is close to the truth, though nobody knows it yet. Another farmer thinks they might be religious statues, Buddhist or Taoist figures from some forgotten temple. This seems unlikely given the military appearance, but it's a theory. Everyone is guessing. Nobody knows.
The work continues for several days. The artifacts accumulate. The well shaft reaches 4 meters, then 5. The pottery figures are everywhere. The crew is no longer digging a well. They're excavating an archaeological site without training or equipment or any understanding of what they're uncovering. Every shovelful risks destroying something. Every bucket pulled up might contain fragments of irreplaceable historical material. Young Shifa finally decides they need to report this. The scale is too large. The mystery is too profound. This is beyond village competence. On March 29, 1974, he traveled to the local cultural affairs office. He brings some of the pottery fragments. He explains what they've found. The officials listen skeptically at first. Farmers are always finding pottery. But when they see the fragments, examine the quality, and hear the description of life-sized figures, their attitude changes. This might be significant. An archaeologist is dispatched. His name is Zhao Kangmin. He works at the local museum in Lintong. He's seen plenty of artifacts from rural finds. Most are minor. Some are interesting. Very few are genuinely important. He arrives at Qiang village
expecting probably nothing special. He descends into the well shaft. He examines the artifacts. His hands shake as he holds the terracotta hand. He knows immediately this is exceptional. Zhao Kangvin begins emergency conservation work. The terracotta is fragile. Exposure to air after 2,000 years underground causes deterioration. The pieces need to be stabilized, documented, and protected. He works with the farmers to carefully extract more pieces. They find sections of heads, torsos, limbs. Each piece is numbered and cataloged. The process is meticulous and slow. Within days, higher authorities are notified. Provincial archaeologists arrive, then national experts. The site is secured. The farmers are thanked and told to stop digging. Professional excavation begins. What started as a well project has become a major archaeological undertaking. The village of Chiang suddenly has dozens of officials, archaeologists, photographers, and curious onlookers swarming the persimmon orchard.
Yang Jifa watches this transformation with mixed feelings. Pride that he found something important. Confusion about what it all means. Concern that the village's water problem remains unsolved. The well never produced water. The drought continues. But nobody cares about the well anymore. Everyone cares about the buried army. The initial excavations reveal the magnitude of the discovery. The well shaft had broken into the corner of a massive underground chamber. The chamber is approximately 200 meters long and 60 meters wide. The floor is paved with brick. The walls are earth, supported by timber beams that collapsed centuries ago. And filling this chamber, arranged in military formation, are terracotta warriors. Hundreds of them, maybe thousands. The figures are life-sized, averaging about 180 centimeters tall. Each one is individually crafted. No two faces are identical. They wear armor, tunics, boots. They carry weapons, or carried them once. The bronze weapons are mostly gone, looted or corroded. But the warriors remain, standing at attention, facing east, ready for battle, waiting for orders that will never come. The archaeological team expands the excavation carefully. They discover the warriors are arranged in rows, infantry in the front ranks, officers behind them, archers, cavalry with terracotta horses, war chariots, though the wooden components have decayed. The formation is precise. This isn't a random burial. This is a military unit, recreated in clay and buried to serve some purpose beyond death. The questions multiply. Who built this? When? Why? How was it kept secret? Why was it forgotten? The answers emerge from historical texts and archaeological analysis. This is the tomb complex of Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor of unified China. He died in 210 BCE. His tomb is about a kilometer west of where the farmers were digging. The terracotta warriors are part of his burial complex. They're his army, his protection in the afterlife, his statement of power that echoes across 2 millennia. Emperor Qin Shi Huang is one of the most significant figures in Chinese history. He unified the warring states. He standardized writing, currency, measurements. He built roads and canals. He began construction of the Great Wall. He buried scholars alive for opposing his policies. He burned books. He was brutal and effective. He transformed China into a collection of competing kingdoms, into a centralized empire. The dynasty he founded was short-lived, ending shortly after his death. But the impact was permanent. China, as a unified state, begins with him. His tomb was legendary. Ancient historians described it. Sima Qian, writing a century after Qin Shi Huang's death, recorded that the tomb contained rivers of mercury, crossbow traps to kill intruders, and a palace complex underground. The tomb mound is still visible, a large hill covered in vegetation, but it's never been excavated. Too dangerous, too culturally sensitive, too unknown what opening it might reveal or destroy. So, the tomb remains sealed. The emperor's body presumably lies within, surrounded by whatever treasures and horrors were buried with him. But the terracotta warriors were forgotten, completely forgotten. The ancient texts mention the tomb, they don't mention the warriors. Either the historians didn't know about them, or they considered them unimportant compared to the tomb itself. The chambers containing the warriors were underground, sealed, invisible from the surface. After the timber roofs collapsed, probably within decades or centuries of the burial, the chambers filled with earth. The land returned to agricultural use. Farmers planted crops above buried soldiers for 2,000 years without knowing they were there. Yang Zifa's discovery revealed what had been hidden. The excavations continued for months, then years. More chambers were discovered. Pit 1, where the well broke through, contained about 6,000 warriors. Pit 2 contained another 1,000 warriors, plus cavalry and war chariots. Pit 3 contained command headquarters with high-ranking officers. Pit 4 was empty, apparently never finished. The total number of terracotta figures is estimated at 8,000 warriors, plus hundreds of horses, plus chariots. The scale is staggering. Each warrior was individually crafted. Hairstyles vary, facial features vary, body proportions vary. Some are tall, some are shorter, some are heavyset, some are thin. The craftsmen who made these figures were representing real people, or at least realistic variations of human appearance. This wasn't mass production in the modern sense. This was artisan work multiplied thousands of times.
The construction process is documented through archaeological analysis and historical inference. The warriors were made in an assembly line fashion. Different workshops produced different components: legs, torsos, arms, heads. The components were standardized enough to be interchangeable, but detailed enough to create variation. A torso workshop might produce 10 different torso types. A head workshop might produce dozens of different head types. By mixing components, the craftsman created thousands of unique figures. The clay is local. The yellow loess soil of Shanxi, the same soil farmers dig through, the same soil that defines this landscape. The clay was refined, shaped, fired in kilns. The firing temperature was around 1,000 degrees Celsius, high enough to harden the clay permanently, but not so high as to melt it. The color variations visible on the warriors reflect different firing conditions and clay compositions. The warriors were originally painted, bright colors: red, green, blue, purple, black, white. The paint has mostly flaked off over 2 millennia underground, but traces remain. Modern conservation techniques can detect the original colors. Reconstructions show the army as it originally appeared, vividly colorful, almost garish by modern aesthetic standards, but impressive, intimidating.
an army of clay soldiers in bright armor, standing in perfect formation, ready for war. The assembly required enormous labor. Estimates suggest 700,000 workers were involved in building the entire tomb complex, including the warriors. That's a significant portion of the empire's labor force. The work took decades. It began when Qin Shi Huang became king of the state of Qin at age 13. It continued throughout his reign. It was still ongoing when he died. Some sections, like Pit 4, were never completed. The emperor's successor, faced with rebellions and instability, probably abandoned the project. The workers were dismissed or executed or simply stopped working. The tomb was sealed. The chambers were left as they were, and history moved on.
The human cost was enormous. 700,000 people working for decades. Many died during construction. Ancient historians record that workers who knew the tomb's secrets were killed to preserve those secrets. Whether this is true or exaggerated is debatable, but the project certainly consumed lives. Workers in mines extracting minerals for bronze weapons. Workers in quarries extracting stone. Workers in kilns firing terracotta. Workers digging underground chambers. Workers arranging warriors. Workers building booby traps. The tomb complex is a monument to imperial power built on the backs of ordinary people who left no names and received no recognition. Yang Jifa's life changed after the discovery. He became locally famous, the farmer who found the terracotta army. Journalists wanted to interview him, officials praised him. He received commendations from various government bodies. But the practical benefits were limited. He remained a farmer. The village remained poor. The well project was never completed. The drought eventually ended, as droughts do. Life continued. In the years following the discovery, Yang Jifa was sometimes employed at the museum built on the excavation site. He sat at a desk in the gift shop and signed books for tourists. A living connection to the discovery. Visitors could meet the man who found the emperor's army. He performed this role with patience. He signed thousands of books. He answered the same questions repeatedly. Where exactly did you dig? What did you think when you found the first piece? Were you scared? Did you know it was important? His answers were modest. He was just digging a well. He found some pottery. He reported it. That's all. He didn't claim grand insights or dramatic realizations. He was a farmer doing farm work who happened to strike something extraordinary. The modesty was genuine. Yang Jifa never sought fame. He was thrust into it by circumstance and a shovel strike in dry earth. The other farmers who helped dig the well received less recognition. Their names are recorded in archaeological reports, but not widely known. Wang Puji, Yang Wenshui, Yang Jifa's brothers, and others. They all contributed to the discovery. They all deserve credit. But historical narratives prefer single heroes. Yang Jifa became the face of the discovery because his name was first on reports and because he was willing to participate in the public role. The others returned to their farming. Their contribution faded into footnote status. The excavation continues to this day.
5 decades after the initial discovery, archaeologists are still working at the site. The chambers are so large and the artifacts so delicate that excavation is painstakingly slow. Each warrior must be carefully uncovered, documented, conserved. The surrounding earth must be analyzed for organic remains, metal fragments, paint traces. Modern technology helps. Ground-penetrating radar maps underground structures without digging. Chemical analysis reveals paint compositions. DNA analysis might eventually identify organic materials. But the fundamental work remains manual. Brushes and trowels, patience and care. Much remains buried. The tomb mound itself has never been opened. The underground palace described by ancient historians remains unexplored. The Mercury rivers might exist or might be legendary. The crossbow traps might still be armed after 2,000 years or might have decayed. The emperor's body might be preserved or might be dust. Opening the tomb would answer these questions. It would also risk destroying whatever is inside. The decision has been made to leave it sealed. Future technology might make safe excavation possible. For now, the emperor rests undisturbed while his army stands guard above. The terracotta warriors have become global icons. Images circulate worldwide. Tourists visit by the millions. The site is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. It's one of China's most important archaeological treasures. Museum exhibitions travel internationally, bringing selections of warriors to audiences who can't visit Xi'an. The warriors have become synonymous with ancient China in popular imagination. They're instantly recognizable symbols of Chinese civilization. This creates both opportunities and problems. The opportunities are obvious: tourism revenue, national pride, cultural diplomacy, archaeological research funding. The problems are subtler. The site is being loved to death. Millions of visitors annually create conservation challenges: breath moisture, temperature fluctuations from opening and closing the museum, physical wear on facilities. The terracotta is fragile. The site is finite. Balancing access and preservation is an ongoing challenge. There are also questions about interpretation. The warriors are presented as cultural treasures. They're marvels of ancient craftsmanship. They're testaments to Chinese civilization's depth and sophistication. All of this is true, but they're also products of tyranny. They're monuments to autocratic power. They were built through forced labor and probably considerable suffering. The grandeur has a dark foundation. Modern presentations sometimes minimize this. The emphasis is on archaeological wonder rather than political context. This is understandable, but it's also incomplete. Young Jifa lived long enough to see the discovery's full impact. He died on January 2024 at age 90. His obituaries appeared in international media: the New York Times, The Guardian, BBC. A Chinese farmer received global recognition because of what he found 50 years earlier. His later life was comfortable but not lavish. He received some financial support from the government and the museum. He lived in his village. He remained connected to the land and the community where he'd spent his entire life. His legacy is complex. He didn't create anything. He found something, but the finding mattered enormously. If he hadn't been digging that well in that location, would the terracotta army have been discovered? Eventually, probably. Development or other agricultural work would have eventually broken through, but maybe not for decades or centuries more. Yang Jifa's shovel accelerated history. It brought the buried emperor back into human consciousness.
It revealed a wonder that had been waiting in darkness for 2 millennia. The drought that prompted the well digging was real. The suffering was real. The need for water was urgent and practical. The discovery that emerged from that need was unexpected and transformative. This is a pattern throughout archaeological history. Major finds happen through accident as often as through intentional research. Construction workers break into tombs. Farmers plow up artifacts. Shepherds find scrolls in caves. The work of revealing the past often happens through the mundane activities of the present.
The terracotta warriors exist in strange temporal space. They're 2,000 years old. They're also perpetually present. Every day, thousands of people stand before them. Every day, millions more see images of them. They've been continuously observed for 5 decades. They're ancient and contemporary simultaneously. This is the paradox of archaeology. By uncovering the past, we make it present. By bringing buried things into light, we transform them from historical facts into current experiences. The emperor intended the warriors to serve him in the afterlife. They were buried to be unseen. Their purpose was spiritual or magical or political, depending on your interpretation. They were meant to remain in darkness, fulfilling their function in whatever realm the emperor imagined he'd inhabit after death. Instead, they stand in brightly lit museum halls. They're photographed constantly. They're studied by scientists. They're gawked at by tourists. Their intended purpose is completely subverted. They serve not the dead emperor, but living humanity's curiosity and wonder. This raises philosophical questions. What does it mean to disturb the dead? Ancient cultures went to enormous effort to create eternal resting places. Tombs were sealed, curses were inscribed warning intruders, treasures were buried. All of this was meant to last forever. But nothing lasts forever unchanged. Graves are opened, mummies are unwrapped, burial goods are displayed in museums. The ancestors might be appalled, or they might not care. We can't ask them. We can only make choices about how to treat the physical remains of their beliefs and practices. Modern archaeology tries to balance competing values: respect for the dead, scientific inquiry, public education, cultural heritage preservation, commercial interests. These values sometimes conflict. The decision to leave Qin Shi Huang's tomb unopened reflects respect for the dead and caution about unknown risks. The decision to excavate and display the terracotta warriors reflects judgment that the educational and cultural value outweighs the disturbance to the burial context. Reasonable people can disagree about where these lines should be drawn.
Yang Jifa never expressed regret about the discovery. He seemed to view it as fate or luck or simply what happened. He didn't agonize about whether he should have left the warriors buried. He needed water. He dug. He found something. He reported it. The consequences followed from there. This matter-of-fact attitude is characteristic. He wasn't a philosopher or an ethicist. He was a farmer. He dealt with practical realities. The practical reality was that finding the warriors changed his life and changed global understanding of Chinese history. He accepted both outcomes with equal calm. The persimmon orchard where the well was dug is now beneath the museum complex. The trees are long gone. The field is paved over. The rural landscape is transformed into tourist infrastructure. Parking lots, gift shops, restaurants, hotels. The village of Xiyang is prosperous now, relatively. Tourism brings money. But it also brings disruption. The quiet agricultural rhythm is replaced by commercial activity. Whether this is progress depends on perspective.
Material standards of living improved. Traditional ways of life were altered. Both are true. The night is settling over Xi'an. The museum is closed. The tourists have departed. The terracotta warriors stand in their pits, illuminated by security lighting. The expressions on their clay faces are enigmatic, calm, alert, patient. They've been standing for 2,000 years. They'll stand for thousands more unless catastrophe intervenes. They're surprisingly durable for objects made of baked earth. The same material farmers mold into bricks and vessels and roof tiles. Humble clay, transformed through craft and fire into something that endures. Outside, the city continues. Xi'an is a modern metropolis. Millions of people, high-rise buildings, traffic, industry, universities. The city has existed for millennia under various names. Chang'an during the Tang Dynasty, when it was the world's largest city. Now Xi'an, a regional center in western China. The terracotta warriors have become the city's most famous feature. They bring visitors from everywhere. They put Xi'an on mental maps globally. The emperor's ambition for immortality succeeded in unexpected ways.
Young Jifa's shovel breaking through into the warrior chamber was a hinge moment, one of those rare instances where a single action divides before from after. Before the strike, the warriors were buried and forgotten. After the strike, they were revealed and famous. The transition took time to fully unfold, but the moment itself, metal biting into earth and striking terracotta, was the pivot point. Everything changed in that instant, though nobody understood it at the time. This is true for many historical moments. Their significance becomes clear only in retrospect. The farmers digging the well thought they were solving a water problem. They were, but they were also opening a door into the past. Both things happened simultaneously. The mundane and the extraordinary coexisted in a dry field in rural China. This is worth remembering. History isn't just grand events and famous people. It's also ordinary people doing ordinary work and stumbling into the extraordinary. The emperor sleeps under his mound. The warriors stand guard. The farmers who found them have mostly passed away. The archaeologists who excavated them continue their careful work. The tourists visit and marvel. The cycle continues. Each group plays their role in the ongoing story of the discovery, the story that began with drought and desperation and a shovel striking clay in March of 1974. The moonlight falls across the museum complex tonight. The building is silent. The warriors are still. Outside, the land stretches into darkness. Fields and villages, rivers and mountains. The landscape that has supported human life for thousands of years. The same landscape where the first emperor unified warring states and built his eternal tomb. The same landscape where farmers still plant wheat and dig wells when drought strikes. Past and present layer over each other, separated by time but sharing the same soil. Sleep comes to the village. To the city beyond, the night is quiet. The warriors stand their eternal watch. The emperor rests. The farmer who found them rests too now. Their stories intersect at a point underground where shovels meet terracotta, where need met wonder, where the ordinary work of survival revealed the extraordinary ambition of an emperor who wanted to live forever and succeeded in ways he never imagined. The stars wheel overhead, the same stars that looked down on the emperor's construction projects, the same stars that guided farmers through seasons for 2,000 years, the same stars that shine on the museum tonight. Time passes, Earth turns,
Stories are buried and revealed. And sometimes, when conditions are right, when drought forces action and chance guides a shovel, the buried emerges into light. The forgotten is remembered, the lost is found, and a farmer becomes a name that echoes across the world, connected forever to an emperor and an army of clay.